I remember the day not too long ago when I stood in front of my brand new home. After a year of headaches from the over-budget and over-delayed build process, I finally held the keys to my 11.4-acre kingdom. It felt surreal. The contractor's truck pulled away, and the sound of its exhaust eventually faded, leaving only the shrill whoosh of the wind against the structure. The house, a rambler, stood broad and strong under the increasingly dark clouds that promised a chilly fall storm. The exterior was a mix of white brick and wood paneling, styled to look like a rustic barn. Front and center was a light brown double door made from pine, flanked by 3 matching wooden pillars on each side, supporting the covered front porch. The garage faced the side, tucked away neatly. I'd seen the house several times during construction, but now that it was complete, it felt different. There was something about it that seemed almost ominous against the looming clouds of the storm. The yellowing grass, planted too late in the season to root properly, and the various shades of brown in the fields behind the house only added to the effect. As if on cue, lightning struck in the distance behind the house, almost as though the scene was posing for a dramatic photo shoot. Even though the house was brand new, it had a strange, noticeable essence to it, like a historical relic. It made me wonder about the stories it might carry if it could talk. The house was designed to look rustic, sure, but there was something else about it that I couldn't quite put my finger on. If houses could have old souls, mine certainly had one. A cold gust of wind snapped me out of my thoughts, reminding me that I didn't have much time before the storm unleashed its fury. I took a deep breath and walked in, inhaling the smell of fresh paint and carpet. My paint. My carpet. Each step echoed through the open living area, bouncing off bare walls, hardwood floors, and the vaulted ceiling. The last time I'd been inside, workers were all over the place, filling the house with their chatter and clamor. But now it was just me. My 3,250 square foot house felt oddly massive, almost lonely in a way. For the past year, I'd been living in a cozy fifth-wheel camper while waiting for the house to be finished. As I wandered through my new home, it crossed my mind that maybe I'd gone a bit overboard. Did I really need this much space as a single 29-year-old? Still, I had no regrets. I started in the master bedroom, smiling at the luxury of space I'd finally have. The California king bed I'd ordered would fit easily, with plenty of room to spare. Hell, the closet alone was about the size of my bedroom growing up. Walking through the rest of the house, I quickly realized I'd underestimated just how much furniture it would take to fill the place. It was overwhelming to even think about. I decided that hiring an interior designer would be my best option. As I locked the door behind me and took one last look at the house, my house, I allowed myself to smile. This wasn't just a home. It was a symbol of my success. Whether I wanted to admit it or not, I didn't need all this space. I'd built it as a sort of middle finger to those who doubted me, underestimated me, and looked down on me. Of course, I wanted a place to put down roots, maybe even raise a family one day. But proving a point played a big part in the decision. My furniture was set to arrive in 10 days. Until then, I'd be heading back to the camper to wait out the storm. If I'd known the real storm that was coming, I would have turned away and never come back. 1 week later, moving in wasn't much of a process. The furniture company delivered everything and arranged the house according to the orders of my interior designer, Rachel. She'd picked out most of the housewares for me, and what little I did own, I just carried over from the camper. As Rachel unpacked the kitchenware, she rolled her eyes at me when I placed my red coffee maker on the counter. "Nope, hide that away," she said. "You can't have a red coffee maker when all the appliances are stainless steel." Why not?" I asked. "Because it's hideous," she exclaimed, throwing her arms up dramatically with a laugh. This is why you're single," she added with a teasing grin. "Or maybe it's because I like choosing my coffee maker," I shot back in the same playful tone. "Yet here you are, hiring a woman to pick out everything in your entire house," she replied, giving me a cheeky wink. "Can't argue with that," I said, chuckling. "So, how much do I owe you anyway?" "Oh, we can discuss it over dinner," she said casually. as if we'd already planned it. Dinner? Well, yeah, she said, stepping closer. You've got me working on a Friday evening. That's serious overtime right there. All right, I said, testing her seriousness. Steak? I was thinking Italian, she said with a smile. I know an adorable place by the lake. Sounds expensive. Overtime isn't cheap, cutie. You're driving, she said, already heading for the door. I stood there for a moment, stunned. Well, I'll be damned, I thought. Got a date with a beautiful woman without even using a pickup line. Life was turning out all right after all. We hopped in my truck and started driving. Out of the corner of my eye, though, I noticed something strange. A child staring out from one of the windows on the main floor. I slammed on the brakes, turning my full attention to the window. But the child was gone. The curtains swayed slightly as if they'd just been moved. Are you okay? Rachel asked, looking at me curiously. Yeah, I said quickly, lying. I just thought I saw a coyote. You'll see a few of those around here, she said with a soft laugh. I forced the strange sight out of my mind, pressed the gas, and drove off. It's a little big for someone without kids, don't you think? Joanne asked me, like mother, like daughter. Before I could even think of a comeback, Abilene's oldest child, Abigail, tapped me on the elbow. Uncle Nick, I thought you didn't have any kids, she said, tilting her head as if it were a question. I don't, I replied, crouching down to meet her eye level. Then who's the little girl downstairs? I froze. What little girl? I asked. The only kids here are your cousins and siblings. No, Abby insisted, her face serious. There's a little girl in the laundry room. She keeps crying. A shiver ran down my spine at the mention of the laundry room. Normally, I'd have brushed it off as a child's imagination, but after what I'd experienced the night before, it wasn't so easy to dismiss. I promise there's nobody in there, I told her, trying to ignore the unease crawling through me. But there is. I saw her, Abby said, getting visibly frustrated that I didn't believe her. Okay, I said, trying to keep things calm before her mom could step in. Let's go take a look. She grabbed my hand and led me downstairs, with Abilene and her husband Brad following close behind. See? No one here, I said as we entered the laundry room. I was relieved, but not entirely convinced myself. But she was right there, Abby cried, pointing to the farthest corner of the room. Right there. I didn't know how to respond. I opened my mouth to say something, but Abilene jumped in, scolding Abby about making up stories. I wasn't listening to her, though, because for a brief moment I thought I heard it, the faint sound of a little girl crying. Later, that night, the one good thing about my stepfamily was that they never overstayed their welcome. By 3:30 in the afternoon, everyone was gone, and I collapsed on the couch with a beer in my hand. I'd asked Rachel to stop by and help me finish the untouched charcuterie board, but she had a family dinner to attend. Disappointing as that was, I couldn't complain about an evening of football and cold beers. Before I got too comfortable, I headed downstairs to clean up the toys. The kids had scattered everywhere. Cars and Barbies were all over the place, and I smiled when I saw they'd even cracked open the books I'd bought. Their usual reading was religious-themed, so I figured they'd get a kick out of a few silly books about farts and gross humor. I shoved everything into the storage space under the stairs, struggling to fit the oversized rocking horse inside. It had been expensive, but seeing the kids love it made it worth every penny. As I finished, I found myself staring at the laundry room door. I didn't want to admit it, but there was something off about that room. It wasn't just the strange events that had happened, it was a deep, gut-wrenching sense of wrongness. Even from a distance, the room gave me chills. I hurried over, slammed the door shut, and bolted upstairs. That night, I dreamed, or at least I thought it was a dream. I was standing in the laundry room, drawn there by the sound of crying. A little girl sat in the corner, her legs crossed, her head buried in her hands. She wore white pajamas with pink unicorns, and her tangled brown hair hung over her face as she sobbed uncontrollably. I knelt beside her and gently touched her shoulder. She flinched, stiffening like she expected me to hurt her. Hey, I said softly. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. Maybe I can help. What's the matter? She loosened a little but kept crying. I'm stuck here, she said through her sobs. What do you mean stuck here? How did you get here? I asked, trying to stay calm. The bad man brought me here, she whispered. We can't leave. We're stuck here with the scary thing. Her sobs turned louder. What do you mean, the scary thing? Maybe I can help you, I said, trying to reassure her. She stopped crying and turned toward me. her tangled hair hiding most of her face. "You can help me?" she asked quietly. "Of course," I said with a warm smile. I reached out to brush the hair from her face, but as soon as I did, I recoiled. Her face was horrifying, battered, bruised, and misshapen beyond recognition. Dark rings of bruising circled her swollen neck. "Please," she begged, grabbing my hand. "Please, you have to help me. Please." Before I could respond, the lights in the room flickered out, and a deep, bone-chilling cold filled the space. Behind me, I heard a low, maniacal laugh. The girl screamed, her voice shrill and full of terror. "No! Help! Please help me!" she wailed as the laughter grew louder. I shot awake, gasping for air and drenched in sweat. Relief hit me like a wave. It was just a dream. Or so I thought. That relief didn't last long. I wasn't in my bed or on the couch. I was lying on the laundry room floor. Panic set in. I scrambled to my feet, fumbling for the light switch. When the lights flicked on, I saw it, the rocking horse. It was sitting in the middle of the room, despite me putting it away under the stairs earlier that night. The following day, I couldn't sleep after that. I kept telling myself it was all just a bad dream. But deep down, I knew something was wrong with this house. Rachel came over for breakfast that morning, her cheerful presence a welcome distraction. As we sipped mimosas, she asked, "So, Nick, how are you settling in?" "It's great," I said, hesitating. "Why'd you pause?" and she asked, her brow raised. I sighed, deciding to be honest. "I think this house is haunted." She stared at me, waiting for an explanation, so I told her everything. About the crying girl, the strange noises, and waking up in the laundry room. When I finished, I braced myself for her to think I was crazy, but instead she said, "I believe you." I blinked in surprise. "I saw a little girl too," Rachel admitted, "on the day you moved in. I've been trying to convince myself it was just my imagination, but it felt so real." Her confession was strangely comforting. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. 2 weeks later, Rachel stayed over most nights, and by then, we'd both gotten used to the strange happenings, crying, footsteps, and toys mysteriously moving around. I convinced myself it was harmless. That night, though, everything changed. I woke up to a whisper in my ear. "Please help me." The voice of a terrified child sent shivers down my spine. My fear paralyzed me until I heard heavy, inhuman footsteps. I made my way to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. But when I looked in the mirror, I wasn't alone. Behind me stood a monstrous figure, towering, translucent, black and red skin, and empty, white eyes. It leaned close, its icy hand burning my shoulder. The thing smiled, revealing rotting gray teeth. Then it was gone. Moments later, blood-curdling screams erupted from the basement. I had no choice but to go down. The laundry room light flickered madly as I entered. The walls seemed to echo the screams. Something in me snapped. I punched through the drywall, tearing it away in a frenzy. Inside the wall, wrapped in thick plastic, was the body of the little girl. Her face was frozen in fear, her lifeless eyes staring at nothing. I screamed, but it was drowned out by a dark, mocking laughter. The last thing I remember was slipping on spilled detergent and hitting my head. Aftermath. I woke up outside on a stretcher, flashing lights illuminating the house behind me. Rachel was crying, explaining everything to the police. They found the girl's body and evidence of a satanic ritual beneath the floorboards. The contractor admitted he'd unknowingly hired a man under the table to finish the laundry room. A man connected to unsolved crimes. That man is still out there, and I know he'll kill again.